Well, good evening, everyone. So, two funny things happened when we were getting ready for this event. I called in a panic to tell our CEO to bring the PA system with him, and I told him exactly where it was and everything, but I forgot to tell him to bring the cables, so it didn't work so good.
But it was nice and heavy and a good workout.
Yeah, there you go, that's right. And the second thing we did is we got the food, so please make sure you eat it. We got this vegetable plate from Kroger, and we opened it in the back room, and I think you can smell it out here. It's either the cauliflower or the broccoli, so I apologize for that. But welcome everybody. Some of you have been with us before, some of you haven't, so I'm glad that you're here. This is our second Industry Insight with veteran leaders. Our first one was with Aaron Dorn and Murrie from Studio Bank, the CEO and president of Studio Bank, a brand new bank, or about a year old here in town. And this is our second one, and we'll get to Doug here in a minute. Sterling is not sitting up here, but I want to give a shout out to Industrious, because they have taken really, really good care of us, and they let us use their space pro bono, and it's just been excellent. And so a shout out to them. This is the second or third time that they've helped us out, so we appreciate that. And so welcome again. And obviously you all know why we're here with Doug Kreulen, CEO and president of the Nashville Airport, but maybe what some of you might not have known if you didn't read all the way down in his bio is back in the day, he used to be an Air Force C-130 pilot. So there you go, all right? Retired from the Air Force. He also retired at my alma mater, the United States Air Force Academy, so that makes him doubly nice there as the Chief of Staff. He'll tell you a little bit about his background, but we're thrilled to have him. We're going to chat a little bit about some of the experiences he's had as a veteran in finding the jobs that he found, and then we want him to give us all the dirt on the airport. I want to know all the politics. I want to know who hates who. I want to know who got British Airways to come here. I want to know all the cool stuff. All right, cool, so we're good there. All right, so why don't you tell us, as you did when we met, just a little bit about your background.
Okay. Well, thank you all very much for giving me the opportunity to come here and speak to you. I hope I can answer some of your questions that you might have. My name is Doug Kreulen. I'm a veteran of the United States Air Force. I spent 27 years in the Air Force. My dad and my father-in-law were both Army aviators for many years. I finished high school in Enterprise, Alabama, went to Auburn University out of high school, and I wanted to be a...
Go Gators.
Yeah. War Eagle. I know there's some Alabama fans too. I can't help you there. So I went to Auburn, and I wanted to be a forester, and I had no money, and I was hungry. And this Air Force recruiter said, hey, if you sign up, we'll give you $100 a month. And I tell everybody that $100 cost me 27 years of my life. But it was a good 27 years. I graduated from Auburn. There was a backlog to go to jet school, so they asked for volunteers to go to helicopter training. So I went back home to Fort Rucker, Alabama, learned how to fly helicopters, stayed there at Fort Rucker and taught Army and Air Force students how to fly helicopters. Went into Blackhawks out of that and went to Special Ops Command down at Hurlburt Field, Florida. My bosses were all fixed-wing pilots, and so after 4 years in the Blackhawks, they said go to jets. I did. Went to Randolph Air Force Base, Texas, learned how to fly jets, and that led me into C-130s. Flew those with the Special Operations.
Which is not a jet, I'm just saying.
It's close, but it's better than a jet because it gets you in and out of bad places. But the 130 was a great experience, so I flew with the Special Ops Command for about 4 more years, and then did straight tactical airlift, dropping soldiers out of the back of it. I lived overseas in Germany, obviously had a couple tours in the Middle East. My last overseas tour was in Japan, and then I went to the Air Force Academy as the Chief of Staff, and had what I consider a pretty good career. Happy, married to the same lady I entered with, got 2 good, strong sons, and but I wanted to continue a couple more years, and I got a call from a retired Air Force officer that needed help in a defense company, and that's how I ended up out of the Air Force Academy to Huntsville, Alabama. I went there. The job was good, but it was defense work, and I I had done my 27 years and I wanted to do something different. I was helping my oldest son, who was about to graduate from college and with a degree in aviation management, look for a job and practice interviewing. And I said, man, I could do some of these jobs. I used to do them in the Air Force. I could do some of these jobs. And so I started applying for management positions at airports. I got rejected by Phoenix. I got rejected by Chattanooga. I got rejected by Okaloosa County, Florida. And finally, Huntsville gave me an opportunity to come in and take over ops, maintenance, and public safety at their airport. Did that for 4 years. And I promised my wife when we got out of the military that this is our last move. We're never moving again. And Christmas of 11, we saw this opportunity in Nashville to come up here in the same position I was doing in Huntsville, but just at a bigger airport. I came up here and took over ops, maintenance, and public safety. A few years later, became the COO, and then a couple years after that, in December of 17, I had the opportunity to become the CEO, and so that's what I'm doing now. So we can talk about that or military and
cool.
As we go.
Well, and so I just wanted him to give you your background, because I think it's fascinating, and those of us who have transitioned and continue to transition. So you're kind of on your second or third, so that's cool. You did the military, then you did a defense industry, and done the military or done the airport, and then moved in that. So just as I think when people transition, they think sometimes it's going to be all or nothing, and that's not necessarily true. So that's good to hear on the success for that. You and I chatted before we did this that I was going to ask you a couple questions, like, so what do you think made you successful finally as a veteran and has made you continue? What skills have you used as a veteran, both then and now?
When I got out at the Air Force Academy, we actually went to Fort Carson, Colorado for our transition assistance program, which was good. And I can remember all the veterans that came in and spoke at the transition assistance, and I was like, I don't believe this. I'm just going to get another job and work it. And a lot of them came in and said, hey, you're going to have 3 or 4 jobs, post your military career, because you're going to search and try to find something that you want to do. And I didn't really buy into that. I had thought I had locked up a job in Huntsville, and so I moved there. But flexibility that we all learned in the military is key in the post-military career, and it gave me a lot of ability to adjust. The toughest thing, I think, when I got out what I think was a sort of easy transition, because it was in doing defense type work that I felt like I was related with. It was in a defense company that did secure radios, jammers for airplanes, and all stuff that I flew and operated. It was a little harder going into the airport side of the house, because I had 2 challenges, I think. One, everybody that is not military thinks that we're all from the Full Metal Jacket movie, and we're all hardcore, running into walls kind of thing nonstop. And then just the language barrier. In the military, I had a joint tour at the Pentagon. You learn to speak Army, Air Force, Navy, Marine, and Coast Guard, but they don't understand what we're talking about. So when I knew that I'm going to try this airport type career, I had to learn another language. And so everything you knew in the military can relate directly to airports. So in the Air Force, or whether I was at a joint base, with the Army, I have security regulations that I followed in the military. I have Air Force regulations on performance and how you do professional development. And so you basically had to learn how I translated all these airport security requirements that TSA has today and the operational requirements to run a commercial airport. Is the Air Force has similar regulations to that. And so what got to be successful is when you could walk into that interview and explain in non-military jargon, here's what I already can do, and here's what I think I can do for you. And that's really the friends and peers that I've counseled in my career. It's let me see your resume. Let me help you take the military out of it and speak plain, civilian language. And let me tell you what they're looking for. When I see somebody, and by the way, we have 80 job openings at the airport if you're interested. We could talk about that. But when you see somebody that's got a military resume, it's easy for somebody that's been out for a while. I've been out 12 years now, and you could say, hey, this is really important, but you may want to say it like this, and so that you can help them understand exactly what you're doing. If you get an Air Force person that comes in and with our background in aviation, how many tanker missions did you fly or airlift missions did you fly? Well, let me tell you where you're at. You're over here in the Middle East and you're doing this, or you're in Kosovo and you're trying to do this. How can you now tell somebody why that matters to them? You've been in difficult positions, you've made decisions, that are tough to make. And the military, whether you're officer or enlisted, I know what professional military education did for both officer and enlisted personnel. And we were talking earlier, a couple of us, and the military veterans that I have at the airport right now, every once in a while, like, man, if I only had a master sergeant, or man, I need a captain, or I would really love to have a command, sergeant major running this right now. And so we really go out and look for that kind of talent, somebody that's going to help me make those kind of decisions.
Cool. I'm going to stop here for a minute and see, before we get into the dirt about the Nashville airport and its future and all that, which I'm excited about. Any questions on transition or anything you want to ask Doug or anything like that? And certainly you can ask him after, he's going to hang out. But just if anybody had anything, and I don't want to put anybody up. Yes, Jonathan.
You ask me questions, you get airports.
Oh, look at that.
It's okay. They're stylish.
Before you ask, since the mic's going that way, can you just reiterate the question?
I will read it.
Okay.
All right, Jonathan.
What does the airport CEO do?
Okay, what does the airport CEO do?
Okay. Well, right now, manage a staff of about 307. It's growing to 380. I think it'll go to 450 over time. That's one job. The biggest thing is plot the strategic future of the airport. So the airport authority, which we are, I can explain that if you're interested. We basically operate like a business. So we have an economic impact to the city in Middle Tennessee of about 7.1 billion. We have 16 million passengers that fly through here, 206,000 operations a year. And so my staff and I make sure that we fly safe and that we process everybody in accordance with TSA regulations. So my main job is making sure that moves on, and that if you're the passenger, that you're happy. Because if you're happy, you're spending money at the airport, and that's how I pay the bills.
So I have a question. Do you count bachelorette parties?
Bachelorette parties are great. They when you see them come in on Thursday, they're awesome. You should come back out on Sunday when they're all going home. They all got sunglasses and hats. They've had a long 3 or 4 days that they're in downtown Nashville.
Go ahead.
In regards to transition, I was wondering if that was something that you had strategically planned, and if so, how many years out, and then what did you do to prepare, or is it something you just jumped and then planned it?
More of the jump, and should have had a parachute on, didn't have one, landed hard, and it was not a tough transition, but it's stressful on all of us as you leave to try to figure out what you want to do with you grow up. If I knew, where, nobody has a crystal ball, but if I knew where I was going to be at today and I thought I was interested, just like I did professional military education my whole career, I would have gone out and gotten my certifications to make me marketable like this on the commercial side of the house. Just recently, I have 2 sons, Ryan and Sam. Ryan's 32, Sam's 29. Ryan does aviation management. He's never been in the military. He's the director of operations at Columbia, South Carolina. Sam is a buyer, just moved from the Cracker Barrel Corporation to Louisiana Pacific downtown, so he buys all their capital equipment for them. Why do I say that? Is I keep telling them you have to get the certifications and skills necessary to be successful in your career. So I got out of the military. I was, let me do some quick subtraction. I was 49, approaching 50. I'm 61 now. So at 59, I took my, I'm an American. I'm an accredited airport executive. So at the end of my business card, it says AAE. Well, I had to pass a 180 question examination. I had to have a master's degree, which the Air Force gave me 2 of those. And then you have to pass an interview of your peers that's 3 hours long on 4 different modules. Well, only 10% of all airport executives ever get to that certification. And I'm doing it at 59 years. So you still got to work to show people that you've got that drive to lead organizations. The proudest day not only was for me, I mean, as hard as many evaluations as we did as instructors and evaluators in the military and National War College, all that, I'm almost crying when I passed that dang thing, you know, at 59 years old. But I pushed my son, Ryan, so he got his within the next year. And I said, you're a lot smarter than your old man because you got yours done at 30 and it took me till I was 59. If I was planning or knew what I wanted to do before I got out, I would have looked into some of those opportunities, but didn't mean it didn't prevent me from doing it, but I knew what got me ahead in the military, and I knew if I showed that same level of drive and commitment, it would make me successful outside the military. I can't throw that far, but yes, sir.
You throw it all the way back. Say that again so I can repeat it. Okay, how important are incentives in landing new airports and new routes to the Nashville airport?
Incentives are not as important. We don't really give incentives for domestic flights. So if a new airline wants to come in or an existing airline wants to come in and give us a new destination domestically, we will provide them between $50,000 and $100,000 of marketing money for a new destination. For a British Airways type flight or a future flight to Central Europe or Asia as a goal going forward, British Airways, we waived all their fees for 2 years, and I've given them $500,000 a year for 2 years to market that flight. And so far we've been very successful with that. The flights run in between the mid 80s to 90% load factor, and you know, normally greater than mid 60s is making money. So they're making good money here. We'll add another European destination in the next year or two, hopefully, and Asia is a little bit farther down the way, but we're working on it. I had a call this week with the governor's staff. He wants to find out how to do that. So,
Yes,
yes, ma'am.
Going back to the transition, I don't know, I'm sure you found this to be the case, but I had somebody who was open, but then it was really hard to find for someone to actually like give me a you know, to hire me. I was wondering how you, during your transition, you were able to walk through the door and then kind of close the deal, and what were the keys to closing the deal?
I think a lot of the military people that I've talked to, you know, that want me to look over their resume or talk to them about jobs that they're looking at, I'm convinced that if you can get to the final interview, if you can get to the interview, you can win the deal. You in the airport business, you know, in the management side of the house, I had to be able to speak TSA and FAA language versus Air Force regulations and Army regulations. So you had to convince them that you understood what was needed to get the job done. But then a lot of it turned out to be tell me one of the biggest challenges that you've had to deal with, or if you're going to be a supervisor, have you had experience supervising? And you explain that. Well, okay, if you've been a supervisor before, have you ever had to deal with discipline problems? That's my favorite question. I'm like, oh man, but yeah, sure. But I have as many discipline problems at the airport as I did in the military to deal with. So if you could relate and explain whatever your technical skill is or training, this is how I've done this type of job before. This is how I've supervised people before. Here's what here's my work ethic that you can expect from me. So, those are the big. What's your profession?
Well, I'm an attorney, so I went from the military to law school, and when I was doing my, I guess after your second year, before your second year, you do your office interviews. So I got a ton of interviews because they were like, who is this chick who's an engineer officer who's in law school? And so I had a lot of people who just want to see who that person would be, but it didn't necessarily translate into positions at a law firm because they're not necessarily looking for management as an associate law firm. But now I'm on my own firm and it's fine.
Well, let me give you a good example. I don't know if you've heard of Kurt Schaefer. Okay, Kurt Schaefer, I just met him within the last year, and I've talked to him a good bit since then because I'm sucking up to him for money. Kurt Schaefer is the Associate Administrator of Airports for the FAA. He's a West Point graduate, and he's an attorney, and he got out of the 101st at Fort Campbell, and they hired him, and he was the general counsel at the Nashville airport for 18 years.
Wow.
Until 2004, and he moved up to DC. So it can be done, and we have attorney openings as well too. So,
Alex, and then there was one in the back. Go ahead.
So I'm in the aviation science program at ACSU, and for those of us who are looking for a commercial pilot career,
yeah.
are there any internships available at the airport?
I'm just going to repeat that question. So are there any, for those folks who are transitioning into maybe being a commercial pilot, are there any internships at the Nashville airport?
Yes.
We have internships that we're just starting for the technical trades, but if you're on the plumbers, electricians, mechanics, those kind of things, we don't have any internships yet and we wouldn't because the airport doesn't hire the pilots. Now we are going to have internships and we have apprenticeships for the trade skills. We have internships for the professional degree side of the house. So most of our aviation management, business degree persons that want to do aviation can come in and apply directly for operations management type positions, and we'll train them on what they need to do to implement the FAA regulations. But the commercial pilots, are you flying today at MTSU?
Not yet.
He's at Austin P.
Austin P?
I'm getting
Okay. Well, I'm on the board of directors for the Auburn Aviation School, and Delta has invested $5 million into Auburn's aviation program. I think there's a similar investment at MTSU, and basically what they're doing is grooming college students to go through and get all your different air transport pilot degrees, and when you're ready to go, hey, I'll hire you to come fly for my airline. So I would watch and look into that because they're giving students in college scholarships to get their ATP, air transport pilot license, and then sucking them right into the airlines.
good choice.
Yeah, good choice.
Somebody, Martel?
Well, the future soldiers that are future veterans that are transitioning out of the military, what kind of advice would you give those veterans that, as far as that are making a smooth transition from the military life to civilian life? What kind of advice?
So I'm going to repeat that. For folks who are transitioning, military folks who are transitioning, what kind of advice to make it as smooth as possible?
Obviously, I would make sure that you get a good-looking resume. Don't be bashful about passing out the resume and networking with folks. If you run into groups like this that are veterans that, have some, connections, ask them to look stuff over, ask them to introduce you to people in that career field or skill. Both of us I am a recent graduate of Leadership Nashville. She is my mentor.
Scary, isn't it?
And when I went through Leadership Nashville, I had done the same program when I was down in Huntsville. But it's amazing who you meet. And I might not know somebody at the airport, but I might know somebody that's looking for somebody in your specification. What is your skill?
I'm a master's of education.
Master's of education. So, some of the folks that we just graduated, or I just graduated with in the last leadership class, run training programs at Belmont, Lipscomb, Bridgestone, Americas. We have training programs at the airport as well. And so I don't think that just because you have the master's degree in education, let's say, that you only can do an education degree. Look at the job, descriptions that are out there and see if you can figure out in your mind how you can translate what you already know education-wise, but also the leadership skills you got in the service, and then find a way to put it on your resume, and especially when you get to the interview, convince them that you can do what they're asking for. It is a sales job, and you just got to be confident when you get into that room. When I got those rejection letters and cards, I was like, okay, maybe this ain't gonna ever happen. But when I got one and just said, hey, would you, you could come in. To get the job up here, the transition from Huntsville to Nashville, and I was perfectly happy in Huntsville. My wife was sort of like, if you get this, we'll move one more time, kind of thing. And she, but you ain't never gonna get it, Okay, well, I'll apply for it. And when I got a rejection letter from Nashville, and I called a friend that I knew at Huntsville that used to work in Nashville. I said, can you believe they rejected me? And he called and goes, you're an idiot. This guy's a good dude. You ought to give him at least a look. And so when they gave me a look, then I had to take 6 dang psychological tests and exams and go through this huge process. I'm like, man, I'm never going to get this. They're going to find out I'm crazy or something from these tests. But once you got to that interview, then it's like, okay, let me tell you what I've done in my past. What have I done at Huntsville and what I think I can do for Nashville. So it's about selling yourself.
Another question. So you talk about, definitely on prayer levels. You talk about the rejection letters and hearing her question about how she just couldn't land the job. Did you have moments of doubt? And if so, how did you overcome it?
I don't really say that I had doubt, maybe not 100% confidence, but I was like, hey, what, when you get a rejection letter, it doesn't say why they rejected you, but it's sort of like, our assignments that we had in the military, I had good bosses, and we just never stopped. So we always tried to figure out a new way to attack or fix this problem, and I just took it on as that. The CEO of Raleigh-Durham Airport, Mike Langa, he's the one that sent me a rejection letter at Chattanooga. And so I had kept my rejection letters. So I moved up here, and then worked my way up. When I got to be CEO, now we're talking to each other. I said, hey, you remember this letter? Yeah, what about that? So, so there's a little bit of that, you got to have, but, you've done well. What was your background in the military?
So I was communications, but not the side of communications I'm doing now. So I work for operations and I'm doing their communications, media, but I did the other side of that, military. So definitely a big transition.
Yeah, it's a big transition, but, they're not looking for somebody that's going to come in there and fall over and break down crying or something like that. They want somebody that's going to come in and look them in the eye, shake their hand, and when they ask you, well, what's the biggest challenge you've had? you know, I've got some challenges for you, or, you know, or have you ever, you know, been given a difficult assignment, and how did you overcome that? You know, thinking through those kind of issues so that they understand, you know, what you're doing. So,
My husband took my rejection letters and papered the basement with them. Staple them to the wall. That's motivation. So there we go.
there you go.
Yes.
How many veterans are at B&A and in Metro Authority? Because you covered Johnson also, right?
You bet, you bet. And I apologize that I was going to look that up because I knew I was going to get that question. I would say I probably have at least 30. My chief operating officer, Robert Ramsey, is a former Air Force civil engineer. I just hired Adam Floyd to be the director of my emergency operations center. He's a Coast Guardie, and he did that the majority of his time. My biggest monster maintenance supervisor is a Marine, and you don't mess with him. I mean, he looked like the Incredible Hulk, and he's a great guy. And you know, a lot of my police officers have been Navy, you know, corpsmen and Army officer or Army enlisted as well. So, you know, it's a good bit, but it's really growing too. I'm trying to figure out how to reach, you know, Fort Campbell better and let people know, hey, to think about it. We are an authority, which basically means the city divorced us in 1970. So we operate just like a business. I have to raise my own revenue and I have to pay my own expenses. Everything I have left over, I'm required by FAA rules to reinvest back into the airport, and that's what you see with all the construction that we're doing. We're paying that ourselves to try to keep up with the city.
On that note, just before we get to any other questions, I know as we were trying to schedule a date to do this event, you had a board meeting. So tell us about your board.
I have a good board. They're made of 10 commissioners, and they're appointed by the mayor. They're approved by the city council, and then that's basically it. So my chairman is Dr. Samuels, a professor out at Murrie Medical College. We have pilots, engineers, lawyers, finance experts from the community that serve on our board. By our bylaws, I have a board meeting every month. So the second Wednesday of the month is committee meetings. The third Wednesday of the month is board, and they are responsible for policy and fiduciary oversight to make sure I'm not spending the money wrong and I'm heading in the right direction. And so, just like in the military, you got bosses and male, female bosses in the military, male, female bosses as chair of the board and as members of the board, and I basically report to them. So we agree on goals and objectives early every year. We just started a new fiscal year 1 July. So my job is to raise 166 million, keep my expenses under 110 million, use that 50 million of extra revenue and build $1 billion expansion to the airport. So we basically, the airport runs sort of like your own home. The airport's my home basically, 6 in the morning to 6 at night. And we have a 30-year mortgage that we're trying to get so we can borrow the money to build everything that you see out there.
Questions? Anybody else? Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
You had a lot of flights going to Europe, and as far as like the information, that's passed, like people fly, but you have U.S. regulations and you have European regulations of how they protect that data.
Yeah.
Do you have a lot of issues? You have to address those issues at the airport with like the GDPR, the European regulations for data privacy.
Right.
Just for everybody on our YouTube video, we're talking about data protection internationally between the U.S. and Europe.
You bet. We don't have as much of an issue with that because basically I am a big landlord. So I manage right now, it's about a 900,000 square foot facility. It's growing to about 1.4 million, and I rent space. So if you're Southwest, you rent my gates and you operate there. Now, if you're going overseas and dealing with that, a lot of the data is between the airlines. I provide them with fiber backbone and data storage, but they're the ones that are actually passing that data from our standards to, on the international side, it's called IATA on the airline side. So we have to comply with their regulations just like the FAA. Yeah.
How about, so tell us a little bit about British Airways. Was that you? Was that the city? Was that the board? Who wanted to do that? Was it a conglomerate? What was it?
Yeah, when you get a new service like British Airways, it basically takes a team. We're trying to figure out, do we need another European team or do we need to start an Asia team to try to figure out how it is? It's all about the numbers. So at the time, before British Airways, the state, the city, and the airport formed a team to try to recruit an international carrier to come into Nashville. It had been since '92 that had happened. And so they came in May 2 years ago almost. And the state provides a backdrop if the flight is not successful, and they provide some marketing, and the city provides some money to do marketing, but I'm the one that really gets stuck. So we had to do an $8 million upgrade to our international arrival facility, and I had to build a $7.5 million kitchen, and then those fees that we waive basically is $2.6 million. And so the city and the state only pay if the flight is not successful. Well, it's been successful, and so they have very little outcome. But my business is economic development, and so I'm trying to enhance tourism and business transactions, and so that's what we do. So we invest so that the city and Middle Tennessee prosper. So each of those international flights, if you look at the data, British Airways flights generates between $75 and $100 million of new business in Nashville from tourism. So my investment is helping the city of Nashville from hotels, tourism, honky-tonks, all the business that goes on. I was really surprised how much music businesses goes between England and Nashville, how much healthcare goes between Nashville and England as well, and plus the normal tourism. So they're doing really well. There's 28 cities that British Airways services in the United States, and we're like number 12 in terms of success. So that's good. We're not on the bottom. They're not looking to chop anybody off. We're a strong performer in terms of the revenue that they're generating. So they, without any major hiccups, they're gonna stay here in Nashville because they're making good money.
Yes.
How many people at the airport do we have handling all? I've determined maybe 3 facets of what you're doing between flight operations, federal regulations, and then business operations. To what extent does your staff handle all 3? How many people do you have handling all 3 there?
So I'm just going to repeat the question real quick. How's the staff divvied up between business ops, flight ops, and internet and regulation?
Okay. This is a good question. So I'm sure we got all different services. We probably got Army and Air Force in here. I'm not sure if we have any Navy or not. Okay, we got some Navy. Okay. So when you go onto an Army post or an Air Force base or a naval base, who do all those service people work for? The commander. At the commercial airport, they don't work for you. That's the biggest thing you learned that's a good point on the transition. So when I went to Huntsville and I took over airport operations, I had 75 employees, and I'm like, my God, at an Air Force base, I'd have 2,000 or 3,000. And what you don't realize when you switch from the military to the commercial side of the house, you gotta be good at networking and relationship building, because I have 15 airlines at the airport. None of them work for me, and they all have 400 or 500 employees that are working there. So the same number of people I have, there's 5,000 people that work at the Nashville airport. My part of running the business is 307 right now. So Delta, Southwest, United, JetBlue, Signature Flights aboard Atlantic, you know, aviation, American.
My husband flies for American.
That's
to
right.
Atlantic.
You pick your business. So it's a lot of average sized businesses all working together to be successful. TSA, Steve Wood, we were talking about earlier, he's a retired Army colonel, runs the security for the Nashville airport for TSA. He has as many employees doing security as I do, you know, running airport operations. So it's a real mix. So you could get a job, you know, in the airport aviation business. You might work on Nashville, but you might not work for me. You might work for American. You might work for Delta or another. There's a lot of businesses that are out there, all needing the same sort of skills. Yes, sir.
Is your source of funding, percentage-wise from the business that you're generating within the airport or from outside sources?
And just so everybody can hear, where's the source of funding for the airport?
Good. Great question. Everybody, that's normally I get that. Okay, well, let's go back to the 100 and say 50 million, 150 million. It just works out mathematically that about, it's a third. So I get about $50 million, a little bit more than that from the airlines. The airlines pay me to land, park, and rent space. So when they land a jet, I get money. When they park a jet at the gate, I get money. And when they run in the ticket counters or gate counters, I get money. That's about $50 million. I generate about $50 million of concessions. So when you come to the airport, you need to rent a car, you need to eat 2 hot dogs, buy a shirt, and buy a 6-pack of beer to go with you. That's about $50 million as well. And then you need to park at the airport, and that raises about $50 million of the revenue. So it's almost all internal. Part of that concessions revenue is people like Uber and Lyft. They pay us to come out there. Taxis pay us to pick people up. The hotel shuttles pay us. And so there's a lot of people that are paying, and they're really paying because without us, they wouldn't have a business. So they're paying to get access to our customers.
From a profit point of view, is the community support too?
Zero.
So everybody heard that on YouTube. There's no philanthropic support.
Correct. And that's the good deal about being an airport authority, because the city of Nashville and all of Middle Tennessee, Franklin, Williamson, Rutherford County, you know, Wilson County, they're all getting this at no addition to their tax base. That's why they created an authority, and that's why we work so hard to try to raise our own revenue. And what's funny, and Kurt Schaefer I mentioned earlier that runs the FAA for airports, I'm up there lobbying because from the state of Tennessee, I generate a lot of sales tax at the airport. So I generate $264 million worth of state income tax. I get $3 million of that back. That's not a good deal in my mind. I generate Yes, he did. I was talking to his chief of staff yesterday, and we're trying to work on some of this deal. I generate $164 million in federal tax every year. I get $3 million of that back. That's not a fair deal.
Long way to 100.
And so what they're doing is they're helping out other airports, and they're helping out other things that are important in the state. But when you're building as much as we're building right now, it is really hard to raise all that revenue. And so it's some place down there, I'm asking them, I have some business things I think they could do to help me. I'm not asking for tax dollars. Just let me roll some of my sales tax that I generate back into my business. And so we'll see how to get that. But if you're an airport authority and you're not a city-run airport that has that tax base behind it, you're getting a really good deal. because you're not paying for it. Now, I should say, you do pay. If you fly out of Nashville, when you buy a ticket, you pay a passenger facility charge. So when you come out on your ticket, you look down there, you'll see PFC. I get $4.50. So every time you leave, fly out of Nashville, I get $4.50. But I use that money. That's a lot of money to pay for some of this, you know. So 16 million passengers, 8 million of them are leaving, 8 million are arriving. That 8 million that leave, I get $4.39. The airlines take 11 cents off the top, so for collecting that.
One thing that we haven't had to deal with in the military is unions. Any familiarity with that, or anything you've seen from that in either of your jobs?
Well, my first master's degree when I was at Fort Rucker was in personnel management. We had one labor relations class, and the professor in the class took us, like here, if we were all in the class, divided us in half and says, your labor and your management. And then he gave us a challenge. You had a negotiated contract by the end of the class, and you got a grade based on your contract. I thought we were all going to fail because we could not reach agreement. So I have seen civil service and unions in that side of the house. I, knock on wood, don't have unions that I have to deal with. At the airport authority, we pay good money, great benefits, and so we don't have unionized employees. Some of the airlines, Southwest, use unionized employees. Other businesses that work out there do have some. TSA is unionized, SEIU, I think it is. So occasionally they want to protest, or they want to do that. We have designated places where they can go protest on the curbs if they want to do it, but it hasn't really caused us an interruption. So.
Cool.
So in Europe, they don't actually park at gates. Is that just a European thing, or does that allow them for more capacity with the smaller building footprint?
Are you talking when you get off the jet, you get on a bus and they bus you in?
Yes, sir.
Coming to Nashville.
Really?
No,
Oh my God.
we're hoping not to, but I can't build the new gates. And we're building, in this expansion, I have 42 gates, and we're building 6 additional gates, expanding the concourses and the center of the airport to go from 14 security lanes to 24 lanes. But that was on the forecast we had a year and a half ago. The new forecast says I need to add 12 additional gates. So I got a problem between now and 2025. What am I going to do? So we may have to hard stand. It's just they've maxed out the capacity of their building, and they can do more ramp. So I may do that as a temporary issue, but long-term wise, I still have enough land to build more gates. So we'll probably do that because it's faster, and no customer, just like our moderator here said, is nobody likes to get on that bus and have to ride to the airplane.
Washington Reagan does that if you're flying American. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Exactly, and so we don't want to do that for customer service reasons, but in order to keep the growth, I mean, the airlines just want to know, where can I park?
It's real cold in Stockholm in January.
Exactly, it's cold, and nobody likes it when it rains, and you got to get down the stairs or whatever, so it costs more money to do that too. So,
Really?
yeah. Yes, sir.
Yes.
One more question. Have you experiencing the growth of Nashville because your customer base is growing as well?
Hang on just a sec. Are you experiencing the growth of Nashville because your customer base is growing as well?
Yes. As Nashville, you hear different numbers, 80 a day, 100 a day, and all that's been growing. We have gone from 10 million passengers a year in 2012 when I got here to, we're going to, within the next couple of weeks, we'll come out with what we did for this last year. We'll probably be greater than 17 million. So we've added 7 million flights. The last 6 years, we've grown greater than 10% a year. So 61% growth in passengers going through that airport in 6 years. And the year I'm about to close out, we grew at 15%. So it's 7 years in a row, greater than 10%, almost averaging 11 to 12%. That's hard because in the normal airport model, when you don't see this boom kind of thing going on, you grow an airport at 3% a year. And so when you're doing 10% a year, you're knocking out 3 years for every year. And it's almost hard to pour concrete that fast to keep up with that growth. So we're working it, and I think we're doing the best we can to do customer service. We don't want to have to do ramp loading, but we're looking at it.
So we are about a minute and a half away from 7 o'clock when we're going to let everybody network at the end. And please eat some of that food because I don't want it for breakfast. Sushi is not good for breakfast. Please eat it. But any last minute questions? Doug's going to stay around a little bit. I didn't quite get into the dirt that I was hoping to get into, but we're going to post this, so we'll be nice to you.
Okay.
We don't want you to get fired.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Any questions? Any more questions? All right, well, a round of applause for him. Thank you so much. Again, oh, thank you.
You got some socks for your husband.
Yeah, I got
If
socks
you
for
didn't
my
get
husband.
socks, and I have business cards, if you want to network, I'll give you my business card. You can reach out to me.
Just really quickly at the end here, I'd like to say thank you for the Operations Stand Down team that made this happen. Our CEO is here, John Kreulen. So please make sure that you say hi to him. The folks in the blue shirts, except for Michael, helped us with everything. And so again, thank you. We will do this again, September, October timeframe. We're gonna have a veteran entrepreneur, Tara Bach. Got to be equal, with the sex thing going on there. Gender, sorry, that's probably more politically correct. So Tara runs, I don't really know what Tara does. She doesn't, John, what does she do?
Freight broker.
She what?
Freight broker.
Freight broker. Tara runs a freight broker, thank you. She does something with trucks. So Tara's going to talk to us about being a veteran entrepreneur. She's in between here in Clarksville. We'll do that. We would really love your feedback. We've asked for your email. Was this useful? Would you attend another one? This is a new series for us. We're really excited about it. Just finding veterans in the community that are doing cool things. Doug, obviously, is one of those. Tara's another one. We'd like to continue this next year, so we'd really appreciate your feedback. I forgot to bring the renderings. I'm going to be fired as the COO. I forgot the boards, the renderings, and the cauliflower smelled. Other than that, it's been a perfect thing. But we are we are renovating our space finally at the corner of 12th Avenue South and Edge Hill. Next spring, we will do this there. The parking will be free. The beer and the wine will still be free. It'll be in our new and improved space, and so we want to continue to have events there. Not that we don't live industrious, but so that'll be really good. So I thank everybody for coming. I hope you had a good time. Please eat more food. Please come and say hi to Doug, and have a great evening.